Hi guys, how are you today? Welcome back to my channel Adventures in America. If you're new to my channel, my name is Jocelyn and today we are going to talk about what foreigners should know or prepare before going to the Philippines. For those who are first-time travelers to the Philippines, it is quite overwhelming to know or where to find the right information before traveling. Please remember that foreign tourists are not yet allowed in the Philippines. Philippines is not yet open for international tourism. So even if you are fully vaccinated, you are not yet allowed to travel in the Philippines unless you have an immediate family member such as a spouse or a Filipino child. However, the Philippine government allows the entry of foreign nationals who have valid and existing visas. And those visas are specifically governed by different rules. So for those foreign tourists, you need to familiarize yourself with the requirements before going to the Philippines. As of this time, specific foreign nationals are allowed or those who have a valid and existing visa. Now, regarding information for specific travel requirements for foreign nationals, there are actually different government agencies involved in the implementation of these rules. However, there is one main interagency task force which governs or which implements the travel restrictions of foreigners allowed to travel in the Philippines. This task force is the Interagency Task Force for the Management of Infectious Diseases, which is composed of different government agencies. However, there are also other government agencies tasked with implementing travel restrictions such as the Bureau of Immigration and the Department of Foreign Affairs. Now, the Department of Foreign Affairs are also governing the different Philippine embassies and consulates abroad. Now, the important considerations when planning your trip to the Philippines is what type of passenger are you as a foreign national? Number two, what airline are you flying into? And then this information will determine what kind of ECIF or electronic case investigation form you are required to submit. Also, another factor to determine is your final destination. So I'm just only going to focus my video for those foreigners who are former Filipinos, foreign nationals who have a spouse or a Filipino spouse or a Filipino child either traveling with them or based in the Philippines. Also, please take note that foreign tourists, whether you are vaccinated or not, are not allowed in the Philippines. So if you are a foreigner and if you are planning to visit your fiancé in the Philippines, you are not allowed to enter. Also, there are still rules regarding entry exemption document and an entry visa. So I'm going to focus my video on foreign nationals, specifically former Filipinos, foreign nationals who are married to Filipino nationals, either traveling with this Filipino national or this Filipino national is based in the Philippines. Now, let's talk about former Filipinos. These former Filipinos are considered as such because they have been naturalized in a foreign country. Thus, they are no longer Filipinos, but they are considered a foreign national. However, there is a special rule for former Filipinos. There is a privilege that you can use if you are a former Filipino. It is called a balikbayan visa. A balikbayan visa is available when you arrive at the port of entry. By the way, there are actually 4 ports of entry now in the Philippines: Manila, Cebu, Clark, and Lawag. Rule number 1, all foreign nationals, including former Filipinos, need to have a passport that is valid at least 6 months or beyond. So if you have a foreign passport, it needs to have a 6 months validity. Rule number 2, all foreign nationals and former Filipinos must have a return ticket. So I'm going to talk about former Filipinos. former Filipinos are considered balikbayans, and you can avail of the 1-year visa-free privilege when going to the Philippines. So if you're a former Filipino, you can travel alone or you can travel with your foreign spouse or children. This balikbayan visa is extended to your foreign spouse when you are traveling together. The foreign spouse can also avail of the balikbayan visa, including your children. So that means all of you can stay in the Philippines visa-free for 1 year. However, you need to inform the immigration when you arrive that you are going to avail of the balikbayan visa. Also, the country must be included in the list of countries under Executive Order number 408 to be included or to be able to avail of the balikbayan visa. For example, United States is included in this Executive Order 408, so your husband can avail of this visa as well. Now, what are the documents that must be presented by former Filipinos? Of course, you needed to present your foreign passport plus a proof of your former Filipino citizenship, such as an old birth certificate or a PSA or NSO issued birth certificate. If you don't have this, you can also bring your birth certificates, such as those issued by the local civil registrar, and also just bring any additional proof of Filipino citizenship, such as your certificate of naturalization, or you can also bring like a government or a Philippine government issued ID together with the foreign passport. Former Filipinos or those who are naturalized in a foreign country must also bring the birth certificate of their children if they are bringing their children, and also a marriage certificate, an authentic or original copy of the marriage certificate if you're traveling with your foreign spouse. Now, if you are a foreign spouse and your Filipino wife is in the Philippines, or you have a Filipino child in the Philippines, there are 2 requirements that you needed to fulfill as of this time. First, you needed to have an entry visa. The entry visa is the 9A visa. Number 2, you needed an entry exemption document from the Department of Foreign Affairs or from the National Task Force Against COVID. Now, here is the tricky part. Some foreign nationals who have a spouse in the Philippines, some of them posted a comment in my videos, and they were told by the airline that they are not allowed to board even though they have an entry visa or an entry exemption document. I'm not sure why the airlines would deny them boarding, or there are actually no rules pertaining to this denial of boarding for foreign spouses who completed all the requirements. Based on the information from the Bureau of Immigration, foreign spouses who have a Filipino spouse in the Philippines, they need to have a 9A visa and an entry exemption document before traveling. This is the current rule, and there are no rules changing this requirement as of this time. Now, let's talk about the electronic case investigation form. You have to determine what kind of airline you are flying into. There are only 2 classifications of airlines in the Philippines: those who are PAL passengers, or those flying into Philippine Airlines because they have a different ECIF. And another ECIF is for those flying through a foreign airline. So if you have a foreign airline other than Philippine Airlines, then you needed to register through the padlab.ph. I'm going to send the link below regarding this ECIF for padlab. This ECIF is important because it is a registration for your COVID testing. Now, when do you need to fill out the registration form? You needed to fill it out at least 3 to 5 days before flying to the Philippines. Also, please remember that there is a different ECIF for different ports of entry in the Philippines. There are actually 4 ports of entry: Manila, Cebu, Clark, and Lawag. Now, let's talk about the quarantine requirements in the Philippines. As of May 8, all inbound passengers are required to undergo a 14-day mandatory quarantine. And the first 10 days must be in a pre-booked hotel quarantine facility, and the hotel must be accredited by the Department of Health or Department of Tourism. Now, after 10 days, you will still required to undergo a home quarantine for the next 4 days. However, there was a rule starting June 4th that all passengers who are vaccinated in the Philippines are required to quarantine only for 7 days, and they needed a pre-booked hotel facility for 7 days, and testing will only be required if they are symptomatic. For all the other passengers vaccinated outside the Philippines, will still have to undergo a 14-day mandatory quarantine. Also, please remember that the testing for all passengers will be done on the 7th day, and then the release of the results will be on the 9th day, and then the end of your quarantine is 10 days, and then you will have to continue the home quarantine for a total of 14 days. Another important requirement is that you must have an acceptance letter from the barangay or the local government unit of your final destination. Also, please take note that there is a cost for the swab test depending on your port of entry, whether you are going to Manila, Cebu, Clark, or Lawag. All passengers are required to undergo the swab test regardless of vaccination status. Also, including children or babies are also required to register for the ECIF separately and also required to do the swab test. All adults are required to book a separate room for hotel quarantine. For example, if you are a married couple, you needed to book a separate hotel. However, you can email or contact the hotel directly if you could be together in one room as a couple. So if you're a family and you have small children or adult children, one adult will stay with the kids or child, and also there should be a separate room for each adult child 18 years and above. Now you can contact the hotel directly if you can all be together in one room. Also, if the adult family member has a medical condition, he or she can stay with another adult who can monitor or supervise him or her. This is the only exception to this requirement. Now, after your quarantine for 10 days, if the result is negative, you will receive a quarantine certificate for this one, and you can proceed to go home and complete the remaining 4 days of the quarantine. Now, if you test positive, you will undergo medical management or be admitted at a hospital at your own expense. One important consideration when traveling in the Philippines is to determine the community quarantine level at the time of your arrival. It is important because the Philippines imposes different community levels or community quarantine levels in different areas. Some are under modified general community quarantine, which is the most lenient or lax of all the quarantine levels, and some are in general community quarantine, and some are in modified or enhanced community quarantine level. So these community quarantine levels will determine if you are able to go out or travel from one place to another, and also your age will determine if you can go out or not. Sometimes if you are below 15 or below 18 years old, in certain areas you cannot go out, or if you are above 65, you cannot go out. So it's important that you determine the community quarantine level at your final place of destination, because in this manner you can know whether you're allowed to go for essential or non-essential travel. Now, if you're a former Filipino and you wanted to stay for more than 1 year in the Philippines, you can also do that. However, you needed to pay like the appropriate fees from the Bureau of Immigration to prolong your stay in the Philippines. However, for former Filipinos, you can actually apply for a dual citizenship at the Bureau of Immigration. They have a separate processing time and documents that needed to be submitted if you want to be a dual citizen, because there are more privileges in becoming a Filipino again than being a former Filipino, because you are limited in your travel and it is more expensive to just pay the extension fees to just stay in the Philippines. Another classification of a foreigner is the foreign parent of a Filipino child. So if you are a foreign parent, this is the rule. Based on the latest Bureau of Immigration press release issued on May 16th, foreign parent of a Filipino child, they are not covered by the balikbayan visa rule. So that means if both of you are traveling together, so I'm talking about the foreign parent is not a former Filipino. So that means the foreign parent must be a native foreigner in the foreign country. And the Filipino child, if you are traveling with a Filipino child, you need an entry visa and an entry exemption document from the Department of Foreign Affairs or the National Task Force Against COVID-19. So if you don't have these documents, you will be denied entry. You are not covered by the balikbayan visa rule. The balikbayan visa rule is only for Filipinos who are traveling with their foreign spouse and children, or a former Filipino who is traveling with their foreign spouse or foreign children. So if you are a foreign parent and you are traveling with a Filipino child, the rules are strict. You needed to have an entry visa and an entry exemption document. So if you don't have these documents, you will be denied entry. And this is still the same rule up to this time. So for now, those are the basic rules to remember when traveling. I know it's a lot and you needed to have a checklist to prepare well ahead and avoid all the hassles or being denied boarding at the airline. Now guys, if you recently traveled in the Philippines, please share your travel experience, and if you could please provide us like details of your domestic travel or international travel, or the requirements that you needed to present or how much you paid, and all the other details that might be helpful to our viewers, I would really appreciate it. Also, if you like this video, please give it a big thumbs up. And if you haven't subscribed to my channel, please subscribe and hit that notification bell. I always welcome new subscribers. Again, I appreciate everyone tuning into my channel, and if there's any other video that you wanted me to research or to discuss on my future videos, just don't hesitate to post them in the comments below, and I'll do my best to give you the right information. However, please take note that rules in the Philippines change over time, and sometimes by the time after the uploading of this video, the change is going to happen again. Like the rules are different, so please take note that if you wanted the latest update, please check the websites of the Bureau of Immigration and the Department of Foreign Affairs. And if you wanted to see the latest resolution from the Interagency Task Force, you can go ahead and check on the official Gazette of the Philippines for all the laws and presidential proclamations or resolutions for the travel restrictions. Thank you guys for watching, and I will see you in my next video.